Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So, I need to start this one with a warning. What we're talking about tonight is real. It's not some ancient legend or folklore that got twisted over the centuries. This is happening right now, today. At the base of Mount Fuji in Japan, there's a forest where people go to die. And sometimes the ones who go in don't come back alone. I'm talking about Aokigahara Forest. You might know it as the Suicide Forest. And before we go any further, I want to say this. If you're struggling right now, if you're thinking about hurting yourself, please reach out. I'll put crisis resources in the description. You're not alone. There are people who want to help. But tonight, we're going to talk about what happens in that forest. The things the volunteers see. The things the rangers won't talk about on record. And the 5 documented accounts of people who went into Aokigahara and came out changed. Or didn't come out at all. This forest is about 35 square kilometers of dense woodland at the northwest base of Mount Fuji. It's been there for over 1,000 years, growing on top of hardened lava from an eruption in the year 864. The ground is uneven, twisted, full of ice caves and roots that look like gnarled fingers reaching up from below. And it's quiet, unnaturally quiet. The trees are so dense they block out wind. You can be 10 meters from a hiking trail and hear absolutely nothing. No birds, no insects, just your own breathing and the crunch of volcanic rock under your feet. Since the 1950s, Aokigahara has become known as a place where people go to end their lives. Every year, dozens of bodies are found, sometimes more. The Japanese government stopped publishing the exact numbers in 2011 because they were worried it was encouraging people. But the forest rangers, the volunteers, the police, they all know. It's one of the most common places for suicide in the entire world. And the thing is, when that many people die in one place with that much pain, that much desperation, that much unfinished business, something lingers. The locals call them yurei, wandering spirits, ghosts who can't move on because their deaths were so full of anguish. So let's get into the stories, and I'm warning you now, some of these are going to be hard to hear, but they're real. These are documented accounts from people who've been inside Aokigahara and lived to tell what they saw. Our first story comes from a man I'm going to call Kenji. He's a volunteer. For the past 8 years, he's been part of a group that goes into Aokigahara 3 or 4 times a year to search for bodies. It's grim work. They're not there to stop people. By the time they go in, it's too late. They're there to bring them home, to give families closure. Kenji told me this happened in October 2019. It was late afternoon, maybe around 4, and they were deep in the forest, maybe 2 kilometers from the nearest trail. The light was already fading because the canopy is so thick. They were moving slowly, checking behind trees, looking for signs, abandoned bags, ropes, clothing. That's when Kenji heard it, a voice. Calling his name, not shouting, not panicked, just calm, quiet, like someone standing right next to him, speaking directly into his ear. Kenji. He stopped, looked around. The other 3 volunteers were ahead of him, maybe 20 meters away, sweeping a different section. None of them had turned around. None of them were looking at him. He called out, asking if someone had said his name. One of the guys shouted back, asking what he was talking about. Kenji shook it off, thought maybe he was just tired. They'd been walking for hours, but then he heard it again. "Kenji, over here." This time it was coming from his left, deeper into the trees, off the path they'd marked with tape. He turned and saw movement, just a flash, a shape, pale, human-sized, moving between the trees about 30 meters away. His first thought was that it was someone alive, someone who'd come to the forest but changed their mind. It happens sometimes. People get to the edge, break down, and call for help. So Kenji did what he was trained to do. He called out, identified himself as a volunteer, said he was there to help. No judgment, no police, just someone who wanted to bring them back. The figure stopped moving. Kenji took a few steps closer, pulling out his flashlight. He shined it toward the trees, and that's when he saw her. A woman, maybe in her 30s, pale skin, long black hair, wearing a white dress that looked soaked, even though it hadn't rained in days. She was standing completely still about 15 meters away, just staring at him. Kenji's stomach dropped, because something was wrong. She wasn't blinking, wasn't moving at all. And her feet, they weren't touching the ground. She was hovering maybe 10, 15 centimeters above the roots. He took a step back, called out to the other volunteers. His voice came out shaky, cracking. They came running. Kenji turned to point at the woman to show them what he was seeing. She was gone. The other volunteers thought he was seeing things. Exhaustion, stress. The forest plays tricks on people, they said. Shadows, pareidolia, your brain filling in gaps. But when they walked over to where she'd been standing, they found something, a small clearing. In the center, hanging from a low branch, was a rope, old, frayed, covered in moss, and directly below it, pressed into the volcanic soil, were 2 footprints, small, barefoot, pointed toward where Kenji had been standing. They didn't find a body. They searched that area for another hour. Nothing. Just those footprints and that rope. Kenji said that night, back at the base camp, he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, that blank stare, that white dress, and he kept hearing his name, whispered over and over. Kenji, Kenji, Kenji. He hasn't been back to the forest since. That story is unsettling enough. But what's worse is when the forest doesn't just show you something. Sometimes it tries to keep you. This next account comes from a woman named Ayumi. She's a photographer. In 2017, she got permission from local authorities to document Aokigahara for an art project. Not the bodies, not the suicides. She wanted to capture the beauty of the forest, to show that it's more than just death, that it's an ancient, sacred place. She went in alone. She knows that was stupid. Everyone tells you never go into Aokigahara alone, but she's experienced. She's hiked all over Japan. She had GPS, a satellite phone, plenty of supplies. She figured she'd be fine. She started early in the morning, just after sunrise, entering from the Fugaku Wind Cave side. The plan was simple. Follow the marked trails. Take photos. Be out by mid-afternoon. For the first 2 hours, everything was normal. She got some beautiful shots. The way the light filtered through the trees, the moss-covered roots, the silence. It was eerie, yeah, but also kind of peaceful. Around 10 a.m., she went off trail, just a little bit. She saw this interesting rock formation, volcanic stone, stacked in a way that looked almost deliberate, like a cairn. She wanted to photograph it from a better angle. She stepped off the path, maybe 10, 15 meters, got her shot, turned around to head back, and the trail was gone. Not just hidden, gone. She was standing in the middle of dense forest with no clear path back. No tape, no markers, nothing. Ayumi didn't panic immediately. She had GPS. She pulled out her phone. No signal, but that was expected. The GPS should still work, except it didn't. The screen showed her location as a blank gray square. No map, no coordinates, just gray. Okay, she thought. No problem. She had a compass, old school backup. She pulled it out of her bag. The needle was spinning, not pointing north, not pointing anywhere, just rotating slowly, clockwise, like it was caught in some kind of magnetic field. Now she was starting to panic. She tried to retrace her steps, but the ground all looked the same. Twisted roots, volcanic rock, dense trees, no landmarks, no way to tell which direction she'd come from. She called out, shouted for help. Her voice sounded flat, swallowed by the trees. No echo, no response. And then she heard it. A voice, calling back, "Ayumi, over here." It was her friend Sakura's voice, her best friend from university. Relief flooded through her. Sakura must have come looking for her, must have gotten worried. She followed the voice. "Sakura, where are you?" "Over here. Keep coming." Ayumi pushed through the undergrowth, following the sound. It seemed to be coming from deeper in the forest, away from where she thought the trail was. But Sakura sounded close, just ahead. She walked for maybe 5 minutes. The voice kept calling. Ayumi, almost there. And then Ayumi stopped. Because she remembered something. Sakura wasn't in Japan. Sakura lived in Osaka. Yeah, but she was visiting family in Korea that week. Ayumi had seen her Instagram posts that morning. Photos from Seoul. There was no way Sakura was in this forest. The voice called again. "Ayumi, why did you stop?" But this time it sounded different, flatter, like a recording, like something that was mimicking Sakura's voice, but didn't quite understand the emotion behind it. Ayumi turned and ran. She didn't know which direction. She just ran. Branches whipped her face. Roots tried to catch her feet. She could hear the voice behind her now, still calling her name, but it was getting deeper, harsher. Not Sakura's voice anymore. Something else. She ran until she burst through a line of trees and found herself on a paved path. A real hiking trail. She collapsed, gasping, crying. 2 hikers found her 20 minutes later. They helped her back to the visitor center. When she checked her GPS, it was working fine again. According to the data, she'd walked nearly 3 kilometers in the wrong direction, toward the deepest, most isolated part of the forest. If she'd kept following that voice, she would have been completely lost, probably never found. Ayumi left all her camera equipment in the forest. She never went back to get it. She said no photo was worth that. And here's the thing. That trick, the voice of someone you know, calling you deeper, it's not unique to Ayumi. Volunteers report it all the time. People who enter the forest searching for lost hikers hear their voices. Friends, family, people who shouldn't be there. And every time, the voice leads them away from the trails, deeper into the trees. The rangers have a name for it, Yobigo, calling voice. They tell volunteers, if you hear someone you know calling you, don't follow. Mark your position, call for backup, but never, ever go toward the voice alone. This next story is from an American. Let's call him David. He's a veteran, former Marine, tough guy, not someone who scares easily. In 2018, he was teaching English in Yamanashi Prefecture, about an hour from Aokigahara. David had heard the stories about the forest, but he didn't believe in ghosts. He thought it was all superstition and trauma. People's minds playing tricks after seeing something horrible. So when some of his co-workers told him not to go into Aokigahara alone, he ignored them. He wanted to see it for himself. He went on a Saturday morning in June. Nice weather, clear skies. He figured it'd be a good hike. He parked at the Fugaku Wind Cave parking lot and started walking. He stayed on the marked trails. He wasn't stupid. He just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. About an hour in, he came across a campsite. A small clearing with a blue tarp stretched between trees, a sleeping bag, some plastic bottles, scattered food wrappers, like someone had been living there. David called out, asking if anyone was there. No answer. He walked closer. The sleeping bag was zipped up, bulging, like there was something inside. David's military training kicked in. He approached carefully, announced himself. No response. He reached down and unzipped the bag. It was empty. Just leaves and dirt stuffed inside to give it shape. Okay, weird. Maybe kids messing around, trying to scare people. But then he noticed the food. The wrappers weren't old. They were recent. One of the plastic bottles still had condensation on the inside, like someone had been drinking from it that morning. David heard a sound behind him, a footstep, crunching on the volcanic gravel. He spun around. Standing at the edge of the clearing, maybe 5 meters away, was a man, middle-aged, wearing a dirty business suit. His tie was loose. His face was pale, gray almost, and he was staring at David with this expression, not angry, not sad, just empty. David said hello, asked if this was his camp, if he needed help. The man didn't respond, didn't blink, just stared. David asked again, "Do you need help? Are you okay?" The man tilted his head, like a dog hearing a strange sound, and then he smiled. Not a friendly smile, a wrong smile, too wide, showing too many teeth. David felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Something in his gut told him to leave. Now, he backed away slowly. The man didn't move, just kept smiling, kept staring. David turned and walked back toward the trail. Fast. Not quite running, but close. He didn't look back, but he can hear footsteps behind him, matching his pace. Staying maybe 10 meters back, he sped up. The footsteps sped up. He started jogging. The footsteps jogged. He broke into a run. The footsteps ran. David ran for maybe 15 minutes straight, following the trail markers, not stopping, just running until he burst out into the parking lot. He spun around, gasping for air. The trail behind him was empty, no one there. But here's the part that still freaks him out. When he got back to his car and checked the time, it was 6:47 p.m. He'd entered the forest at 10 a.m. 8.5 hours had passed, but he only remembered maybe 2 hours. The hike in, the campsite, the run back. That's it. He has no memory of the other 6 hours. None. Just a blank gap. And when he checked his phone, he had 32 missed calls. From his girlfriend, his co-workers, even the police. They'd been searching for him. His girlfriend had reported him missing at 4 p.m. when he didn't answer his phone. David left Japan 2 months later. He said the forest had taken something from him. Time, memory. He didn't know what, but he felt lighter, emptier, like part of him was still in those trees. These stories are terrifying, but they all have one thing in common. The people got out. They survived, but not everyone does. And sometimes the forest makes sure you know that. This account comes from a ranger. I can't use his real name because he's still employed by the Forestry Service. Let's call him Tanaka-san. He's been working Aokigahara for over 15 years. He's one of the people who goes in when someone is reported missing. He's found more bodies than he can count. He told me this happened in March 2021. A hiker had called emergency services saying he'd found a body, male, hanging from a tree, about a kilometer in from the Psychobat Cave entrance. Tanaka-san and 2 other rangers went in to recover it. Standard procedure. They'd done it hundreds of times before. They found the location. The body was there. They did what needed to be done. Respectful, careful. They brought the remains out on a stretcher. But on the way back, Tanaka-san noticed something. The trail they'd marked on the way in, the bright orange tape they tied to branches every 20 meters. It was gone. Not torn down, not fallen, just gone. They stopped, checked their GPS. They were in the right area, but the tape had vanished. Tanaka-san told the others to wait. He walked back about 50 meters to check if they'd missed a turn. That's when he saw them, figures, standing between the trees, maybe 7 or 8 of them, just standing there, completely still, all facing him. They were too far away to make out details, but Tanaka-san could tell they weren't alive. The way they stood, too rigid, too still. No breath missed, even though it was freezing cold. He called out to them, identified himself, asked if they needed help. None of them moved. None of them spoke. They just stood there, watching. Tanaka-san backed away slowly. He radioed his partners, told them to move, now. They didn't ask questions. They grabbed the stretcher and headed for the exit. When Tanaka-san looked back, the figures were following, not walking, not moving in any normal way. They were just closer, like they'd skipped the distance. One moment, 50 meters away. The next, 30, then 20. The rangers ran, full sprint, with the stretcher between them. They didn't stop until they reached the parking lot. When they turned around, the trail behind them was empty. But every single one of them saw it. 7 or 8 figures. Standing in the forest, watching them leave, Tanaka-san said, it's not the first time. Rangers see them all the time. Standing figures, watching, following. The unofficial policy is you don't engage. You don't acknowledge them. You mark your route and you do your job. You get out. You never stop. You never go back for a second look. Because the rangers know. Those aren't lost hikers. Those are the ones who stayed. Our final story is the most recent. It comes from 2023. A Japanese university student named Hiro went to Aokigahara with his girlfriend Naomi. They were visiting the ice caves, totally legal. Tourist spot. Thousands of people go there every year. They finished the cave tour around 3 p.m. and decided to walk one of the shorter forest trails before heading back. It was a clear day. Lots of other tourists around. They felt safe. About 20 minutes into the trail, Naomi said she needed to use the bathroom. There was a public toilet about 50 meters back. Hiro said he'd wait for her on the trail. She walked back. Hiro waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. He called her phone. No answer. He walked back to the toilets. The door was open. She wasn't inside. He started calling her name, searching around the toilet area. A few other tourists heard him and joined in. They searched for an hour, called the police. Rangers came in with search dogs. They found Naomi 4 hours later, 2 kilometers into the forest, off trail, sitting on the ground with her back against a tree, staring straight ahead, completely silent. She was unresponsive, wouldn't speak, wouldn't move. They had to carry her out. She was hospitalized for 3 days, psych evaluation, physical exam, no injuries, no signs of assault, no drugs in her system. She was just gone. When she finally started speaking again, she said she didn't remember leaving the toilet. She said she heard Hiro calling her. She followed his voice into the trees, but the voice kept moving, kept leading her deeper. She followed it for hours. She said she couldn't stop. Her body just kept walking. And then she said something that made the doctors go quiet. She said the voice wasn't Hiro's. She knew that. She knew the whole time, but she couldn't stop following it, because it promised it would take her somewhere peaceful, somewhere quiet, somewhere the pain would stop. Naomi wasn't suicidal. She'd never had depression, never shown any warning signs. But the force found something in her, some small crack, some moment of sadness or doubt, and it pulled. She and Hiro broke up 2 months later. She moved back to Osaka. Last I heard, she refuses to go anywhere near Mount Fuji. So what is Aokigahara really? From a scientific perspective, it's a forest, trees, rock, normal geology. The magnetic anomalies people talk about, they're real, but they're caused by the iron-rich volcanic rock. Compasses do act strange, but that's physics, not ghosts. The silence? That's real too. The density of the trees dampens sound. Acoustically, it's a dead zone. But the things people see, the voices, the figures, science doesn't have great answers for that. Some psychologists say it's mass suggestion. Everyone knows Aokigahara is haunted, so when you go in, your brain is primed to see things. Shadows become figures, wind becomes voices, others point to infrasound. Low-frequency sound waves below human hearing range can cause feelings of dread, unease, visual hallucinations. The forest might produce natural infrasound through wind and terrain. And then there's trauma. The volunteers, the rangers, they've seen horrible things. PTSD can cause flashbacks, hallucinations, dissociation. What they're experiencing might be psychological, not paranormal. But that doesn't explain the shared experiences. Multiple people seeing the same figures, hearing the same voices, following the same phantom calls. It doesn't explain the time loss, the GPS failures, the way people walk kilometers in the wrong direction and can't remember how. And it doesn't explain why. After over 1,000 deaths, the forest still feels full of presence, full of watching eyes, full of voices that know your name. The Japanese attitude toward Aokigahara is complicated. It's sacred. It's tragic. It's a place of immense beauty and immense pain. Shinto belief holds that people who die in despair, in anger, in unfinished business, they don't pass on cleanly. They linger. They become yurei. And yurei don't haunt places. They haunt emotions. They haunt the living who feel the same pain they felt. Maybe that's why the forest calls to people. Not because it's evil, but because it recognizes suffering. And it offers what it offered to everyone who went there to die. An end. Silence. Peace. But it's a false peace, because the ones who take it never leave. They stay in the trees, watching, waiting, calling. If you ever go to Aokigahara, and I'm not saying you should, but if you do, follow the rules. Stay on the marked trails. Go with a group. Never go alone. If you hear someone calling your name, don't answer. Don't follow. Mark your position and head back. And if you see figures standing in the trees, don't look directly at them. Don't acknowledge them. Just walk away. Because once the forest knows you've seen them, it remembers you, and it might decide you belong there too. Thanks for watching. If this story affected you, please reach out to someone. Your life matters. You matter. I'll put crisis resources in the description. Hit subscribe for more real stories from across Asia. Stay safe out there. And if you've been to Aokigahara, if you've experienced something you can't explain, share it in the comments. Let's talk about it. You're not alone. Stay safe.